It's my great pleasure to welcome Dr. Jen Howard with us today. She is a member of St. John's. She is also a clinical psychologist, and we invite her today to talk to us, to also give us some advice. Jen, what are you generally saying to your many clients these days with this stress that we're experiencing?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. And I am telling people to get back to the basics of self-care. So if it's helpful for me to define that a little bit, um, I'm focusing with everyone on this concept of, in families particularly, but even if you're living alone, it's really important to take care of yourself first. That metaphor of put your oxygen mask on first so that you can be there to help others and to manage a crisis really applies, especially in families right now. So getting back to the basics of self-care, for me, I'm advising people to think about routine, creating as much of a routine as possible, a consistent routine, which is difficult, but even writing it down, having a schedule on paper that the whole family can see and refer to. And I recommend doing this collaboratively if you haven't already. Getting everybody's input will more likely contribute to everybody's buy-in. So what time should we eat lunch every day? What time should we have bedtime be? Are there any exceptions to that? And then really following a consistent routine if possible.
We were, I think it was in one of our, it may have even been in our coffee hour, our virtual coffee hour last week in church, that someone had mentioned that a real gift has been that they've been able to have breakfast, lunch, and dinner with their family.
Yeah.
Because usually we're on the run all the time, and so that's kind of mirrors what you're saying about creating a kind of schedule.
Yeah, I think that silver linings and the things that we're grateful for are definitely something I want to mention too. Getting back to just basics of self-care though, I also like for people to think about sleep, looking at their sleep. Are they sleeping more than they normally sleep? Are they sleeping less than they normally sleep? And practicing what we in the business of psychology call sleep hygiene. So really doing things to promote a consistent schedule and routine around sleep. When we get adequate sleep, we have access to our best parts of our brain, our executive function out in the front parts of our brain here. And it really makes everything flow a little bit more smoothly, especially under stress. That can be difficult if we're worrying. So I encourage people to think about caring about things versus worrying. And that was something I thought maybe we could spend just a minute thinking about, because this applies to adults as well as kids. Taking our thoughts that tend to be circular and worry thoughts and really asking ourselves, okay, how can I care about that particular worry? Is there one step I can take right now that will allow me to care about that versus worry? So it could be, I don't know when the kids are going to get back to school. I don't know if the school year is over for this year. I don't know what that means for my senior who's graduating, or my fifth grader, or for my first grader who maybe is falling a little behind and needed extra support. So how can we care about that in the moment, today, right here and right now? And maybe one way is we have a conversation with the kids about their fears and concerns, and we hug them. Or maybe it's that we actually take a step to say, okay, one thing I can do is I can make a subtle shift from video games to we're going to include a documentary today in their screen time. And it might seem silly, but that does help the nervous system to relax a little when we take a step towards caring about something versus just going over what is unproductive worry. Actually, worry is not unproductive. It's productive in that it helps us to set our intention on the thing that we don't want to have. So if we think about setting our intentions on what we do want to see, we can kind of transform our worry thoughts into caring about thoughts. So some people have found that helpful right now. The other things on my basic list of practicing self-care are nutrition, exercise, and connection. And so it's difficult. We have limited resources right now to food, but it's helpful to remember that serotonin and sugar follow the same pathway. So if we don't want our mood to be going up and down and spiking and crashing all day, then we don't want sugar to be doing that either in our blood. So it's a good reminder to, yes, allow yourself to have some comfort food right now, but also try to keep blood sugar stable across the day so that we can support our mood and we can support all the hormones and, you know, neurotransmitters and all the things that help us to feel stable and steady right now. So I can give you a real practical example and a funny one from my house.
Sure.
I made sweet rolls with that, like, whatever sugary goo you drizzle on it, and the kids wanted to eat all of them. And I said, you know, I want them to be happy. I want them to feel loved and nurtured right now. Have one, but I also want you to eat a hard-boiled egg and a piece of whole wheat toast. And we're going to try to not just binge on sugar all day right now, because none of us can afford the crashes and the spikes that sugar gives. So I'm not advocating for make this the time to like change your entire diet, but to just have some wisdom about the way that binging on sugar or comfort food can really be problematic to your mood.
How do you manage your own self-care? I've talked to so many families, and you're certainly you're a young family. You got a full house. I'm finding that a lot of families these days are having trouble, like as individuals, to say, "Here's my space."
Yeah.
That I need for a time. I've even heard of people getting up at so early in the morning just to have their own space, and how that affects their schedule too.
Sure. I mean, that is one way. And if you can get to sleep a little earlier, I don't think that's a bad idea right now. A lot of people like us, we're in tight quarters. My office is the boys' bedroom right now. And we've got kids downstairs where I normally work at computers and working with teachers, and it's total chaos. So I tried to do yoga with the kids this morning, and it was a total disaster, and realized that tomorrow I'm going to do yoga by myself and let the kids get exercise another way. My husband and I also talked about the fact that it's really important that when we make the schedule for next week, because we are keeping a schedule here, daily and weekly, just setting some general parameters, that we carve out. One thing we learned from this week that we want to do next week is we carve out alone time for ourselves, that he gets time alone and I get time alone. I'm working a lot, but that's not alone time. I still need to have an hour somewhere in the evening that's just for me, just to kind of process what's going on, to process the stress and the chaos and the unpredictability of a lot of this. So I advocate for lots of teamwork and being a we right now, but we also do need to be selfish about asking for some alone time and finding creative ways to carve that out.
Right. I was really struck by what you said about just taking steps in a certain direction and then letting that go. I think that's very wise to say that kind of to trust or to have faith, or it is not necessarily possible sometimes if we haven't at least moved in the direction of the steps we can take, and then we can let it go. It seems like those two kind of mesh together quite well.
Yeah, I think so. And I think the last couple of things on my list of self-care were connection and nature and spirituality. And I really think that we have to be very creative about connection right now. Obviously, we're social distancing, but to recognize that it's really part of self-care, that it's not enough to just say, oh, we miss seeing our friends or we miss being able to do the things that we were doing, but that it's really, we are human beings. This is a need, not a want. And so I was thinking about how we can be creative about connection, particularly with people that are our extended families. I have family that's on the East Coast. So we were talking about, like, maybe we watch Jeopardy together. Maybe we just don't put so much pressure to have this big Zoom call where we're all trying to talk at once. Maybe we just turn on the television and set up FaceTime and kind of hang out together and watch Jeopardy. Or I was talking to someone recently who said she's doing yoga with her mother. They're both doing the same online yoga class, but they're setting up their phones so that they can chat and laugh and talk about their aches and pains while they're doing yoga together. So I like how people are using technology for connection in really creative ways right now. We have to balance that, though, with a mindfulness about technology right now as well, because it can become, I'm using the metaphor of technology as a controlled substance. And I would include the media in that right now as well. We really don't want to overdose on it, and we have to know when it becomes toxic to our systems and when to kind of pull the plug and say that's enough for today.
Right. It's been a very interesting challenge for us, is whether we were telling people to get off the screen, don't be so addicted to it. And now we're like, oh, we're all on the screen. And, especially as a church, to be told to social distance when our whole purpose is to gather community and support each other. I love the idea of it, considering it a controlled substance and trying to intentionally balance, because I think a lot of us have figured out that because we're changing platforms and the way we're doing it, we're into the technology even more so, and it's important to have a nice balance.
Yeah. Well, I think binging on anything tends to be unhealthy. So one of the things that we know is helpful if you have a tendency to want to binge, whether it's on sugar or other substances or technology, is to create a mindful pause. So I've been practicing this myself the past few days. Before I pick up my phone to check on the news or social media or how many new text messages have come in, I'm just closing my eyes and pausing and taking a couple deep breaths and setting an intention. Do I want to connect right now? Do I want to get information right now? Do I want to, comfort myself right now? What's my intention for using this technology in this moment? And it's really been helping me, because then if I know what it is to get information, for example, I'll say, okay, I can do that in 10 minutes. I'm not going to give myself any more than 10 minutes right now. And I'll look at CNN for 10 minutes. But I'm recommending the mindful pause where technology is concerned, and really checking in about how you feel after you've consumed it, and asking yourself, is this too much for me right now? It can really spike your anxiety, and we know that cortisol and adrenaline are not helpful during times of stress. They just exacerbate it.
Well, this is a great place then to maybe take a pause. And thank you for joining us today, Jen. I really appreciate it. I want to invite everybody to look at the link below this YouTube posting. Jen has offered to give us some helpful resources, and so those can be found in the link right below. Please keep up the good work, and send my love and care to your entire family during this time. And thank you again for taking the time to be with us.
Thanks. And to you too, Scott, and to the whole St. John's community.
Take care.